You have a very long and experienced past as a criminal defense attorney for over 2 decades. Is that correct?
Yes, over 2 decades, yeah.
What is it like when someone gets arrested? What should somebody expect?
Well, there's 2 forms of an arrest, right? The first one would be a felony, and the other one would be not an arrest, but it would be a criminal complaint for a misdemeanor. So those are 2 types of crimes. Typically in a felony, and an arrest would look like, if it's a serious or violent felony, it's completely different, Tony, than if it's a simple, I went to a paperwork fraud case or something that's a non-violent crime. In a paperwork fraud case, they're not going to come break down your door.
They're not.
No, but if you kill somebody, yeah, they're going to come break down your door.
Where is that threshold where they come for you versus they just leave it to chance?
Public safety.
Okay.
That's the number one goal. Is the public safe? If the public is not safe, like right now what's going on in Maine, and my heart goes out to the victims in Maine.
Right.
So the public safety is right now what they're doing in Maine is they are locking the perimeters.
Right now, as we speak, there's been a mass shooting in Maine.
Right.
Over 18 or 20 people
so far,
have been killed.
Yeah. So you asked the question.
The suspect is at large?
Yes. So they did it intertwines and segues into what you asked. In California, they do the same thing. They would tell everybody stay home. They would try to look for the person. They'd form a perimeter, and they'd have a team of people basically going and trying to either arrest him or take him down.
Okay. They're looking for this guy. They're
Yeah.
going to arrest this guy at some point, or
I don't think they're going to arrest him. I think it's going to
kill him if it comes.
I think it's going to end that way because I think the guy knows he's a former reservist, and I believe he has mental problems according to his mother. So it looks like he's probably going to do something stupid, and I'm sure it's not going to end up well.
Okay. But in a regular situation where someone's committed a crime, let's say it's some kind of a violent crime, they might allege they have done nothing, but they're accused of something like maybe as bad as murder or an assault,
right,
or a battery.
Yeah.
How does that interaction with the police usually look like?
Well, let's start backwards. With murder, you're talking about getting a bang on your door at 2:00 in the morning to 4:00 in the morning when you least expect it. Your families are waking up. They've got their pajamas on. They don't know what's going on. You're banging, pounding going on. They just kick down the door at that point. It's called a knock and announce. They're going to break down the door, and they come down with their guns pointing at everybody. You, your mother, your sister, your grandmother are all on the floor wondering what the hell's going on. And then you're watching one of your family members being handcuffed and taken away. So that's the murder scenario.
That's the murder scenario.
Yeah.
That family did not expect it.
Correct.
Also, it's based on not a conviction of any kind, but of some kind of burden of evidence that would allow that kind of an invasion of someone's home? Or is it really just an accusation of a crime?
You would have to have the body of evidence. The fancy term is corpus delicti. In Latin, that means you need to have proof, right? So somebody's got to be dead, number one, for murder. Number two, they have to link you. There's got to be a nexus between you and the decedent. How did the decedent die, and why were you connected to that? They always look to the person that was with them last. That's always the best point to ask. Did you see him last? Where was he? What was he doing? So they always go to the last, and they use phone records also. Now, they have technology to go after you in many, many ways. They got cameras in downtown. It's not like it used to be in the 80s where, you needed Sherlock Holmes to figure it out.
In the 80s, people got away with stuff. Or at least in the TV shows we watched, they used to get away with everything. They just ran and hid. But not when you're pinging cell towers today, triangulating people's positions. You have probably multiple sources to verify somebody's location.
Yes, and let me tell you something interesting that you mentioned that. So when I became an attorney, I was watching the OJ trial, and he got found not guilty, and all these other trials in the 80s, and people getting found not guilty. I said, well, lawyers have power. Look at them. They're going and they're proving that people are not guilty. That doesn't happen anymore. The conviction rate has gone up because of what you said. There's technology, there's data, cell site data. I did a murder case where they convicted my guy just on a ping on a phone, which is on appeal right now. We're fighting that. So my guy was an alleged crip.
Okay.
He allegedly killed a blood in Long Beach.
This is recent we're talking about.
10 years ago, 15 years ago.
Okay. Is that when the Crips and the Bloods were more of a thing? I mean,
They're still a thing.
Are they as big of a thing as they were 10, 15 years ago?
Sure.
Okay.
I mean, maybe the heat is not turned up all the way, but it just takes one thing to turn up the heat.
Okay. So Crip, you have a client.
So he basically, with exactly what you said, they said, we know you killed somebody or you had somebody killed. Now, my client was nowhere in the area. Well, I shouldn't say nowhere. He wasn't near where the person died.
Okay.
He was within a 3 to 5 mile vicinity. The FBI forensic data expert testified, and I'll never forget it. He came to court and he brought a CD-ROM and he started saying, I know your client was there when he got killed, right? So let me pause right now. Even if my client was there, why would he want to there's got to be motive, right? When you kill somebody, you got to have some sort of motive. So the motive in this case, for whatever reason, let's put that aside. They're saying that he didn't like him. He wanted to make sure he didn't get taxed by the Bloods, and he wanted him, out of the picture.
So are you saying
make a long story short,
there was no motive?
The motive was to make sure he didn't get taxed. That was the motive. He didn't like getting taxed by the Bloods. That was their theory. See, a Crip is allowed to, or a gang member is allowed to sometimes come on certain areas of turfs, so long as they get permission, but you're taxed at a very high rate.
Whoa.
Yeah, it's like moving to England,
They have that complex of an understanding between the two gangs. Like you can
of course.
actually,
I
guess that just...
It's a business. I mean, it's an illegal business, but it's a business.
It helps things run more
Of course, run smoother. People don't get, shoot each other up. You make money, I make money.
Okay, so tell us what happened.
So he basically alleged to have tried to wipe out the Blood to not get taxed. And they only had one piece of evidence. It was cell site data evidence, cell site, right? So the FBI guy said, your client was there within the radius. And Tony, what's funny is I played the CD-ROM and I showed him the satellite pictures, and I showed the number that he put up during the trial for the cell site data was not the same number that my guy was at. So it was much, much further away. It was like 10 miles at the time.
Let's tell the kids what a CD-ROM is.
Oh, that's right. It's a compact disc that has a little circle on it, and it used to store data back in the day. It's the equivalent to what's a terabyte hard drive on the USB cards now.
It would be like a thumb drive today.
I can't believe I'm actually saying that.
It would be like a thumb drive.
Are we that old?
Yeah,
you got to spell what a CD-ROM is?
Yeah, but in another 10 years, no one will know what a thumb drive is either.
That's true.
So
all right.
It was a storage device.
Storage device. And
let me just understand, because it's a little bit complex, and I want to make sure I'm following you. The government alleged that your client was in a certain location.
That's it.
Near the murder.
That was the evidence.
And then they showed satellite data?
Cell site data that showed that his phone was in a 5 mile radius.
That's what they said?
Yeah.
And was that true, or we don't know?
I don't think so.
Okay.
It's on appeal right now. Cell site data is, in my opinion, it's junk science.
Whoa.
It really is. It's so subjective. I could, as an expert, I could get up there with my badge and my shiny badge and tell you I've been working at the FBI for 20 years and this is what it says. And you're going to give that FBI more credence than you are the criminal defense attorney that you think is a scumbag, right?
Okay.
Right?
Are you talking about cell tower pings? Or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, you have a forensic data person that's from the FBI that's coming in, that's testifying, right?
Yeah.
How am I supposed to dispute what is saying? I have my expert, but who are you going to believe? The lawyer's expert or the FBI guy, right?
Right.
Why am I telling you this? It's on appeal right now. If you research it 20 years ago, this might have been breaking science, but now we're looking back on it saying, whoa, we got it wrong. The cell phones back then weren't laser accurate like they are now. With your iPhone right now, you could see where your wife is within maybe a 3-inch radius. Back then, it wasn't like that.
No.
It was very, very far, very distant. So it was very shoddy science evidence that got involved. And just to answer your question, so yeah, all you need is a little bit of evidence, whether it's cell site data, it could be hair next to the human, the person that died, it could be anything.
Okay, and in this case, you are going to fight that data because it's old, it's not as accurate.
That's all I had to fight. Well, that and there was no motive. And actually, what's funny is Snoop Dogg came into that trial. Not him personally, but his my gang expert testified that not everybody that throws a gang sign is a gang member. Like at the time, Snoop Dogg was throwing a lot of gang signs. A lot of rappers were throwing gang signs. And I pointed that out to the expert because the expert wanted the jury to believe that my client was a gang member because he was allegedly throwing a rolling 20s or a symbol while he was driving, right?
So you showed him Snoop Dogg in a music video throwing gang signs.
And they admit it. Sometimes people are wannabes or
And
posers.
If their kids are watching Snoop Dogg videos, they're also throwing those gang signs at home.
Yeah, yes, but he nuanced it. He said, no, your guy's throwing a special sign, and that sign is really special. It means something. And he would only know what that sign meant if he was in the gang, which is arguable, obviously.
You're arguing it. So
Yeah, I argued it. He got a bad deal. We should have won that case. We had a terrible judge. Judge Sheldon, I'll say it, worst judge.
dropping names.
I'm dropping names. People know who he is. Long Beach, not a nice guy. Ruled against me on every single motion. I don't talk bad about judges. Most judges are not bad, but I will call out the bad judges. And is retired, so I don't feel bad about saying it. I'm glad he's retired because he just he has a lot of cases that, not a lot, but he's had a few that were overturned. And I'm hoping that mine is going to be the next one.
Now, we were talking about what happens when you get arrested.
Mm-hmm.
And they show up, they take you away. What happens at that point when your family was scared? They came in with the guns. I just want to go back and complete that thought. They handcuffed you and put you in the car, whoever the suspect is. You're alleged of committing a crime,
right.
Violent crime. What happened? Where do you go? Do you go to
jail? You go to an inmate facility where they book and process you. Right. So you want to know the mechanics of it. The mechanics are you're in the car.
Are there do's and don'ts for somebody who's in that position? Somebody potentially innocent who's been accused, who's in this weird position because there was a cell phone ping that there shouldn't have been.
Right.
Are there do's and don'ts for you when the cops come into the home and do that?
Yes. The do is keep silent, and the don't is don't speak to the police.
Now, and that's amazing advice, right? Is it practical? Can you actually do that?
Most people can't. I think it's interesting from a I believe, and I took some psych classes in college, I believe the psychological phenomena is when the human being is accused of something so terrible. It's just a natural reaction to ask questions like, what do you mean? How do you know it's me? What are you talking about? So it's very hard for somebody just to keep quiet.
I can't imagine keeping quiet because I would want to know. What is going on? My family's being scared. What's going on? Can you please tell me?
So what happens then is I say, so Tony, you want to talk to me? Before I speak to you, I want you to hear the following. You have the right to remain silent. Anything will be used against you. And if you want a lawyer, we could give you one. Do you still want to talk to me, Tony?
No.
Some people may say no. So now it becomes 50-50 by giving those Miranda warnings. Miranda means your constitutional right to know that you don't have to speak to the police. Most people will say, since you told me I'd have to talk to you, I'd rather have a lawyer.
Right. Most people do that. Do we have some kind of studies on that?
I would guess. I would tell you based on my practice. I handled over 10,000 cases, tried 76 jury trials. So out of the 10,000 cases, I would say exactly half of them said, no, I won't talk to you. Neither have said, yes, I will talk to you.
How interesting is that?
And I'll tell you why. And most of them are younger people that talk to the police. The younger people, the individuals that are not as educated or not as in tune with their constitutional rights will talk to the police because they want to talk their way out of it. I didn't do it. Oh, you don't have the whole facts. Man, why you do me like that? Come on. They think by actually talking to the police officer is going to say, oh, I got it wrong. Sorry, sir. Go home. Have a great day.
Right. At what level do they actually believe there's a possibility to persuade the arresting officer to stop the arrest? Does that ever happen?
It does.
Does it really?
It's really rare. It sometimes does happen, but it's very rare. All right.
Maybe if you convince them it's wrong identity, it's not actually you.
That's one. Wrong identity is one. It actually happened with one of my clients. She was arrested for a DUI, but it was her twin sister. And she convinced, and she had a picture of her twin in her pocket, and she showed pictures of her, and she stopped the arrest. She called me. She told me about that.
So she showed pictures of the two of them, obviously.
Yeah. The other sister had a warrant for arrest, and when she got pulled over for the traffic violation, they were going to arrest her, and she basically talked her way out of it and said, that's not me. I don't know. I have a twin sister. It's very rare, though. I don't recommend that you doing that.
The twin defense.
Yeah. Well, that was real defense.
Yeah.
She had a black sheep in the family, and that was her. That was her twin.
Yeah. It's actually not her. You cannot arrest her.
Yeah. So once she identified that, he didn't have the power to arrest her, and he ran the background, and he was like, "You're right. It's not you." But that's very rare.
Right.
You should never ever speak to the police. Just when I get a ticket, I'm cold when it comes to the police. I just give my license. Don't say one word. He gives me the ticket. And then I said goodbye.
Do you literally sit in absolute silence?
Silence. I don't say a thing. In fact, I say one thing.
So can you
I show you what I say that I could nuclear bomb a speeding ticket almost every single time and make it go away.
Okay, let's act it out.
I say vehicle code section 40502B. You're officer. He's like, what is that? That means you got to come to my court. I'm not going to come to your court. And the odds of him coming to your court are zil. If you get pulled over in Palmdale, but you live in Van Nuys, you ask for your county seat. Everybody has a right to have that cop come to your court. People don't know that.
What?
Yeah. Vehicle code section 40502B says, if you're employed or your residence, you could have the cop come to your place of employment where your nearest main courthouse is assigned to, or your residence.
Bro, I had all those times I drove out to Victorville or whatever it was.
No. It's the county seat. So it's got to be LA County, which is a big county. That's Victorville. LA County.
I haven't committed that many crimes in Victorville.
It only works in the county where you're in. So if you go to Fresno, it doesn't work. You can't expect the Fresno cop to come to LA.
Fair.
Okay.
Fair.
But you can make the Palmdale cop, which I love doing.
Okay.
Come to downtown Los Angeles.
Wow.
Which they never do.
Wow.
So when I get a ticket, 40502B, please.
Okay.
One time in Hollywood, I have a great story. The cop took my license. Tony threw it in my face. He goes, I'm not going to effing show up to court. And he took off. I told my wife that it was the greatest story. I mean, I piss cops off all the time. Ladies and gentlemen, vehicle code section 40502B. Wow. Write it down, print it out, put it in your glove compartment. When that cop pulls you over in LA County, you figure out where you live. So if you live in Panorama City, you make them come to Van Nuys. If you work in downtown, you make them come to Metropolitan at 1945 South Hill Street. So this is all strategy that you need to do.
That's incredible advice.
Yeah.
How'd
I shift from that?
And if you can find somebody who looks a lot like you, carry a picture of him in your pocket if you don't have a twin. So this whole ability to stay silent, I'm assuming in most countries, that's not going to work.
No, because I don't know about other countries.
If you're in the Middle East and the police are arresting you and they ask you questions and you just look at them with a dumb face and say nothing, you'll probably get your teeth knocked out.
No, I'm sure they'll use their batons to hit you a couple times in the back before they knock your teeth out.
Or in Russia, if they ask you questions, are you allowed to just sit there and look at them and not say anything? I think it might not turn out well.
Well, have you seen what's going on in Russia now? If you just put a sign that says the word war,
yes.
they black bag you and they just throw you inside the van and you're gone.
Right. Mass arrests for anybody who speaks up against.
You can't even say the word war.
No, you can't.
That is, ladies and gentlemen of this podcast, you cannot say the word war in Russia. If you do, you will go to jail. They will take a black bag, put it over your head. You could Google this. You don't have to believe me. And they will arrest you for insurrection, sedition, and other bullshit charges.
Right. So I use that only as a point to kind of transition us into a little bit of a celebration of the criminal justice system. Can we in the U.S.? I mean,
to a certain extent. I don't want to celebrate too much because I have clients that are falsely accused. I know a lot of people that are falsely accused. It's not a perfect system, but I will tell you, I am very, very proud to be a lawyer in this country. I'm very proud that my parents came to this country and allowed me to help people. And I consider myself to be a social worker with a law degree. I love helping people get out of situations. I have a saying, Tony, sometimes good people make bad mistakes. So sometimes people make more than one bad mistake, but I'm not the morality police.
And if you were doing what you're doing now in another country, how would that be? How would that look? Would you be able to do any of what you do in terms of help the people that are accused, help guide them, protect their rights, protect their dignity, protect a fair process for them, find the truth at the end? Would you be? It seems to me it'd be difficult to do that in many countries.
Yeah, you can.
And that we're lucky for that. We're lucky to be here. Agreed.
You have to have the system in place for it to work.
And look, I might be fetishizing the U.S., but what I'm saying is, like, I'm an actual immigrant to this country. Like, I was born in Iran, and I came over to this country at age 4 or 5, escaping the Islamic Revolution of Iran,
right,
where my family would not have been welcome at all. And
your family probably would be in jail if they're in Tehran right now for some stupid reason.
For any reason, well, if you want to look at the legal system of the country of Iran, it's Sharia law. Tell me about it.
It's Wahhabism. It's a strict interpretation of the Quran.
I don't think it's Wahhabism because that's
Sunni.
more.
It's a Sunni Muslim Wahhabi. It's a Wahhabism. It's part of Wahhabism. Well, okay, Iran is
so
not.
Sunni
Iran
and
is not.
Shia divide.
Yeah, I'm
right?
sorry. Iran is Shia. You're right. Iran is Shia. Sunnis are completely different. They don't get along. You're right.
Totally different.
Totally different.
Equally offensive forms of law, if I may say, having been a student.
So what I'm talking about is the Sunni Wahhabism form of law, which is what we know as ISIS. Cutting your hand off for stealing, killing you because you looked at somebody's wife with lust, things like that. That's Wahhabism and Sunnism. But the Shia is a little bit more moderate, I'd say, from my understanding.
So perhaps it's more moderate. But
I'm talking about the criminal justice system. Because
Right.
I have actually looked into the Sharia, Wahhabism, all of the different types of systems in the world, which the most medieval are in probably Saudi Arabia, I'd say.
Right. That I believe. I hope I'm not getting this wrong.
And Yemen.
Is Wahhabism.
Wahhabism, strict Wahhabism.
And then in Iran, you have sort of a counterpoint to that. Some would say equally brutal, which is Sharia law,
Yes.
which is essentially religious law. They have a pretty civil law system based on the laws of France. My first cousin knows a lot about this. They have a system that mimics the legal structure of France mostly, so case law, coded law, just not that different from our form of law, but a little different, right? More civil. But on top of that sits the ultimate religious veto law on top of all that. So it's like if this stuff doesn't get you a conviction under the facts, under the law, there's always the Sharia angle, which
is a catch-all.
It's a catch-all, and it's not a situation wherein where the punishment always meets the crime. At least by our
much harsher.
At least by our Western moral standards, we have this Judeo-Christian society that we're growing up in, Western civilization. We conceptualize it differently. We look at people as having inherent rights. Iran does not recognize that. It's a nation first. It doesn't recognize that.
Why? I'm not an expert in that. I'll defer to you for that. You're from Iran.
I'm certainly no expert. I only bring it up just to say another reason why everybody in this country, here in the U.S., needs to share our excitement. Not needs to. I would hope that they would share our excitement for some of the built-in fairness of the criminal justice system here, the fairness of criminal procedure under our Constitution, under the protections afforded to us here, as somebody accused of a crime, an advantage that, I don't know, 90% of the world probably doesn't have to the level that
most of the world has what I call kangaroo courts, like in Russia. Poor Alexei Navalny. You asked me a question about, well, what would it be like if I was in Russia? Well, if I was Alexei Navalny's attorney, look at the effectiveness of her legal skills. It was none. Lawyers over there are just, in my opinion, people performing. I think it's preset decisions made by judges, and I'm not saying that the lawyers they're not in earnest trying to get a good deal or trying to get the client's case dismissed. I just don't think it's possible.
They're working.
Power.
So I'm assuming a criminal defense attorney defending Alexei Navalny in Russia is doing the best that he or she can.
Absolutely.
I'm assuming.
100%.
But they're
I've been watching
working.
that case.
They're probably working in a more difficult system in terms of the criminal procedures.
It's not only that, they don't have a jury system out there, Tony.
Is it just
a
judges?
judge? It's terrible.
So can I interject on that?
Yeah.
What another amazing aspect of our system, which is a jury of your peers has to convict you for you to go to jail, for us to take your freedom away from you, because it's inherently your right.
Unanimously.
Unanimous conviction is required.
So what happens if one person says no?
You go free? Or is it a mistrial?
It's a mistrial, but yeah, you need a unanimous verdict.
So they can try you again and try to get 12.
Well, if it's 11-1, they're going to try you again. If it's 11-1 guilty, that means the prosecutor's thinking, oh boy, I messed up. How did I not get that last juror? Or you could have a freak juror. I've actually, quick story, I had a client that took a machine gun and sprayed a car about 100-something times, and the guy in the car miraculously didn't get shot. I have no idea how that happened.
That's like the scene in Pulp Fiction where he sprays them and all he hits is the wall.
I don't remember that.
You don't remember that?
No, I'll watch it again.
When flock of seagulls on the couch.
No, I don't remember that. I'm going to watch that. But that's what happened to my client. He basically took a gun. He shot up a car. The guy lived. They charged my guy with attempted murder. I got one person. I convinced one person he didn't do it, even though there was witnesses everywhere. Yeah, he took a machine gun. He sprayed him. It was him. 10 people came. I was able to convince one person that he didn't do it.
So 11 people.
11 to 1 not guilty.
Not
and
guilty.
It was in, by the way, whoever's listening to this podcast, that was in Pomona. Nobody wins in Pomona. The judge in that, it was Judge Gutierrez, who is now a federal judge. He told me almost verbatim, I will say, you pulled the rabbit out of a hat, Mr. Manuelian. That's what he told me after.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
so it's possible to pull rabbits out of hats. You just got
as a criminal defense attorney.
Yes.
Yeah.
But and sometimes that's the best we could do. If we could do that, you could take a 100% guilty person and deflect a conviction. In my opinion, that is a win.
Now, some will say that's crazy. That's not good for America that happened. I think the counter to that might be the prosecution has to do better. Well, they have to have a better case to convict.
I poked a hole. I poked a hole in the story, and one of the jurors, she told me after, she was a probation officer. She came up to me and she said, that question that you asked the expert and he couldn't answer it, that really bothered me. And she was the only one. And it was a great question. It was the reason I asked for not guilty. The gang expert couldn't identify whether my client was a gang member. So how can the motive and the theory about my client trying to kill the other guy because he was a gang member, it crumbled in her eyes.
Got it. Okay.
But the problem was, see, when you say peers, here's the problem. When you say peers, you know what that means? The people that are getting selected in your neighborhood, right?
Your jury of your peers.
Not your peers, of the place where you committed the crime. So it's not like if you commit the crime in Fresno, you get a Compton jury. Does that make sense? The crime has to be committed in Compton for you to get a Compton jury. The crime has to be committed in Los Angeles for you to get a Los Angeles jury. Van Nuys jury. Does that make sense? Are you following me?
Yeah. Is it fair? It feels fair.
Well, you get better shot at Compton. Compton, you have a 90% shot of getting a conviction over any other court. Compared to Van Nuys, especially compared to Pomona. If you were to pick any court, as you said, RJ, I'm getting prosecuted for murder, where would you go? Every criminal defense attorney would tell you Compton.
Really?
Yeah.
You want to be tried in Compton.
I had a joke.
Is it because the jurors are inherently more suspicious of the police department and the prosecution in general?
I'm going to answer that question. The answer is yes. But because of that, I used to say, you remember when Donald Trump said I could shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue and kill him and they'll
the whole country, the whole nation remembers that.
All right, so I used to say somebody could kill somebody in front of a jury in Compton and I could convince them right then and there. It didn't happen.
Okay. Right. And you attribute it to what?
Distrust for the police.
The Compton community,
severe distrust for the original Compton Police Department, which is now defunct, and the Sheriff's Department, which I have, along with Attorney Extraordinaire Glenn Jonas, my mentor, and Chris Driscoll, sued the police department and made them pay millions of dollars for falsifying evidence, planting evidence, all in Compton. Is that a coincidence?
Is that an LAPD branch office?
Compton Sheriff.
Compton Sheriff.
Yeah.
Not LAPD.
Yeah. And by the way, can I tell you something? I'm going to do a little plug here. Yes. I'm going to tell you a story really quickly.
Please.
If you don't mind.
Please.
Great story. And it relates to the district attorney of Los Angeles who's running right now. I'm going to tell you. His name is Eric Sedal. Eric Sedal is now running for DA. And I'm going to tell you a story about why he's a righteous prosecutor. And I believe he'd make an excellent prosecutor. In the middle of a trial where my client was beat up by the Compton sheriffs, you have him and his girlfriend. He happened to be a judge's nephew in Compton. She was a medical student. The cops didn't know that. Cops thought they were drug dealers. So they went over and they started beating on both of them.
So this is two individuals younger, I'm assuming?
Yeah, he was 19. She was 21. And Tony, they started punching and beating them.
This is in Compton.
In Compton, on Alondra and Essie Avenue.
And since there's usually a racial component to these issues.
Oh, it's 100% racial.
Who's white and who's black?
It was Hispanic police officers against two African-American young individuals. Again, I want everybody to hear this. The kid that they beat up or they were beating was a judge's adopted son, nephew. Okay?
What kind of judge?
Compton judge. In fact, when I went to Compton, the judge... Anyway,
you don't have to say the name if you don't want to.
Well, let's just say the judge was very happy that I ultimately got his nephew's case dismissed. But let me tell you what happened. my client, they approached him thinking there was a drug deal going on because Compton, there's drug deals going on, but just not everybody in the community is a drug dealer.
I mean, they were going on in Beverly Hills as well.
Yeah, but not everybody. Yeah, exactly. Not everybody that lives in a certain community does certain things. So they profiled him, and when my client gave him an attitude, he was in a nice Ford Mustang, which his family could afford. It was a blue Mustang, beautiful. And his girlfriend was in the car. I guess the cops got jealous, said, "How do you afford this car?" And he said, "What do you mean?" And he said, "How do you have this car? Where'd you get it from? Where'd you get the money from?"
Young black man, young black lady.
Yeah, I'm not talking about a brand new Ford Mustang. I'm talking about an older one, but it was, waxed and it looked nice. He took care of it. It was probably worth 10 grand for Christ.
He's with his girl.
Yeah. He was with his girl, and they didn't believe what he said. They dragged him out of the car. They start beating the crap out of him. They take the girl's hair and they slammed her head against the cement. Then, like a movie, Mike Turner from the NAACP, who's the president of the NAACP, comes by, of the Compton chapter, and he says, "Hey, you can't do that. Stop that." The police approach him, beat him up. They arrest him. Okay. They arrest Mike Turner. They arrest 2 of my clients, and they prosecuted them, and they planted drugs on them, crack cocaine. And then they arrested him for assaulting the police officer with a deadly weapon and resisting arrest and other charges.
Are these allegedly they planted drugs?
They did. We got the verdict.
You got the verdict.
The jury agreed.
Was it more than one police officer that engaged in that heinous behavior of planting drugs?
Yes.
More than one police officer?
Yes. I'd love to name them too. It's public record, but I won't even go into it.
It's up to you. But so rogue cops?
Go ahead. Everybody Google Hoxie and Smith versus Los Angeles Sheriff's Department and read about it. Okay. Hoxie and Smith.
Hoxie and Smith. These police officers...
It's public record.
It's shown in the court that they planted drugs, crack cocaine.
Yep. And one of the police officers was a tweaker. I call him a tweaker.
Wow.
He was a tweaker for sure. He was on drugs because he was constantly tweaking on the stand. I know a drug act when I see one.
Okay.
And it might have been his drugs that he planted on it. But the point is, when we went to a jury trial, I'm connecting Eric Sadal. In the middle, Tony, I'm cross-examining the police officers, destroying them. I'm not bragging, but I'm destroying them. I'm feeling good. I feel like I've got the hand of Thor on my side, the hammer. I'm hammering this witness. Then I put my star witness on, right? I put my star witness. My client goes on the stand, and in the middle of his testimony, I'm looking at the jury, and the jury's crying. They're crying.
Wow.
And I'm crying. I'm crying because I'm listening to this kid say, "I'm just hanging out with my girlfriend who's going to San Diego Medical School. She was cutting a little girl's hair upstairs in that bedroom. And next thing you know, these cops come and they started accusing me of being a drug dealer and started beating me and my girlfriend, slamming my girlfriend to the cement, literally taking her hair and slamming it." This destroyed me when I heard it. I mean, any human being, I don't care if you're black, white, purple, yellow, red, orange, we all bleed the same blood, my friend. And when I found that out, it was tough. It was tough.
So they obviously racially profiled these two.
Yes.
Or maybe not just racially. It's just more like you're in the neighborhood, you're driving a nice car.
That's still a profile. If it was me and you in that Ford, you think they would come up to both of us, 2 white guys in that? You think they would have done that to us? I don't think so. Let's be real.
Probably not. No. It's hard to know. It's clearly a thing where cops can racially profile somebody.
Absolutely. And so what happened was...
One second. I want to fix this for you. Just give me 1 second.
No, it's okay. It's okay. Got it. No, sorry.
Yeah?
Yeah.
I just don't want you to fidget with it.
So what happened after that point was, in the middle of all this, jury's crying. I got tears in my eyes. Next thing you know, I hear Eric Sadal said, "Sidebar, Your Honor." I love telling this story. He's actually telling this story as he's campaigning now. This is a great campaign story. This is what we need. You asked me about our justice system. Is it fair? People like Eric Sadal make it fair. Eric sidebarred this thing.
He's the prosecutor in this situation?
He sidebarred in the middle of a court, and I thought it was a tactic at first. I thought he was trying to throw me off because the jury was crying. I actually thought for a minute, I was like, this is a low blow move. This is dirty. I thought this is really dirty. And I was really upset because I had the jury going there crying. And what are you stopping the movie for? In the middle of the movie, they're turning up the lights, and they're like, "Okay, the movie's over. What's going on?"
Seems like a punk move.
But it wasn't. And God love Eric. He goes up to the judge and he says, "Your Honor, I'm going to dismiss this case."
Wow. Really?
I've never had that happen before.
He just bought into it.
Didn't buy into it. It was real, Tony. We felt
He
it.
bought into the reality. That's what I mean.
It was, yeah. He felt it.
He accepted it.
I think he had tears in his eyes, if I'm not mistaken. And when we went outside, he came up to the family that I was with. We went into a huddle with Eric, and we prayed for him, and he prayed for us.
That's amazing.
And he said, I'm sorry for what you went through. He apologized individually to everybody. He said, I'm sorry they arrested you. And Eric is a hardcore, staunch, pro-police department lawyer, prosecutor.
As well he should be. That's the team he's on.
And I am too.
That's
what we want. And what kills me is when these cops do things like this. You're there to protect the public, okay? Anyway, so Eric gets the case dismissed. We're in a huddle. Everybody's crying. I'm crying. It was one of the most beautiful days in my life. Mm-hmm. I saved somebody from going to prison for 9 years. Mm-hmm. I saved 2 people's lives, put their lives back on track, and then we sued and we got them, a bag of money. And they're doing well now. But you have no idea how many times this has happened in the past, and it's still going on. George Floyd, all these different cases all around, Trayvon Martin. It's still going on all across America. But if we get, going back to the fundamental fairness, if we get people, I'm not going to say like me, that people that have my attitude where we come into this practice to help people and not for the money, but to help people, then the system will get much better because we care. We're not doing it for the money. I'm not doing it for the money. There's a saying, Richard Branson, Virgin Airlines, he wrote a book and I read it and he says, love what you do and the money will come. So I love what I do, but I don't do it for the money. That's a side benefit. And I do a lot of pro bono work, a lot. By the way, the Hoxie, I did pro bono. All my police brutality cases, I do pro bono. So if anybody's listening to this, if anybody's been beat up by the police and you have no record and you got a good kid, I will not only represent him, I will take money out of my pocket to make sure he doesn't go to jail and get you the experts and get you the detectives and get you what you need to get you the hell out of there. How many lawyers do that today, Tony?
I don't know. You tell me.
0.
I believe it. And what and
why? Why aren't more lawyers doing that? I'm not trying to tout my my feathers. Why aren't more lawyers? I'm doing pro bono now. Why aren't more lawyers doing pro bono? Why aren't people helping more out? You make a lot of money as a criminal defense attorney.
Yeah, it's important.
You make a lot of money as a criminal defense attorney. Why don't you go help a few people?
Right.
Why do you have to go to your cigar shop with your friends and smoke for 3 hours? Why don't you go help somebody out?
Well, can we try to help people right this second? Because in that situation where you're sitting there with your girlfriend on the hood of the car, talking, a beautiful car in Compton, is there any way you can minimize the risk of police brutality? Can you behave in a way, let's not even take your client's fact pattern. Take another young couple as an example. They're not as connected socially as yours happen to be. The head of the NAACP ran by.
Yeah, he happened to be there coincidentally. By the way,
but can I just? Yeah. I have a question about that. That's all. That's probably an African American man.
Yes, of course.
And we weren't there. I wasn't there. Right. But let's just play out the hypothetical that you laid out, which was that he said to the cops, "Stop!
Hey, what are you doing?
What are you doing? You can't do that.
You can't do that. You're beating these kids. What are you doing?"
Oh, because he was beating the kids.
He was beating them.
He wasn't in a way getting in the way of the arrest.
Not at all.
Because I'm trying to steel man the police point of view in any way possible.
They pointed a gun at him and said, "Back the fuck up."
Right.
Mind your business. Back the fuck up.
They go into military mode sometimes.
Well, right? The sheriff is a paramilitary organization.
True. And maybe sometimes out of necessity. We grant them that.
I mean, no, they've admitted that.
And they can abuse the power.
We've deposed them. We've asked them, isn't it true that the sheriff's department is considered a paramilitary organization?
But these interactions where the police and the community in Compton have bad run-ins, it seems to happen a lot. It seems to have, and it's part of the reason why that community distrusts the police more than other communities, right?
Well,
what is causing that disconnect? Is it past police misbehavior that still remains in the collective consciousness of the Black community in Compton, the Hispanic community in Compton? What is it? Why the not immediate, but oftentimes the polarized reaction to one another between this community and the police? Why?
All right, first of all, let me clarify that. I don't believe it is as bad as it was when I came into practice. I think it's a little bit more attenuated in the violence.
On the side of both parties? Or
On
the
the side of the police.
Okay.
I think, honestly, I think we shut them down. They don't want to pay any more money, which is smart. I mean, we made them pay us, I think, $10 million in a matter of a couple of years. That's a lot of money. And they could have hired police officers. They could have reformed the police department instead of defund the police department. They could have taken that $10 million and did some good things with it. But unfortunately, we had to teach them a lesson. And I think since then, they've learned their lesson, because now the police officers are a little bit more courteous. They've changed them. They fired a few. They've turned a couple around. I don't think it's as bad as it was, but the distrust, Tony, is because my understanding of Compton, and I've been going there for almost 20 years, and I've literally went knocking door to door during these civil rights cases. I've sat down in houses, of people's houses. I've had dinner in Compton. The people have invited me. They're a warm, loving community. Very nice people. I love Compton. I really do. The only thing I don't like about Compton is there is no opportunity for the young kids. It truly is. That's the case. And so what do you do when you're a young kid and you don't have opportunity? There's only two choices. One, you got to get good grades and you got to get out of your neighborhood. Most people don't. The second thing is you start a business. Most people don't have the money for that. The third thing, and the most easiest one, is you start an illegal business and make money right away. So when that happens, what happens when you have an illegal business? You need friends. Those are called gang members, right? That's what they call them. If there's a meeting between certain culture of people and are doing certain violent things, they could label them as a gang member, especially if you are associated with one. But even if you're not associated with a gang member, the reason why this has gotten so bad, in my opinion, is because they needed the wolves to take care of the wolves. And what I mean by that is there were gang wars going on in the 80s between the Crips and the Bloods, and the police couldn't handle it. They were ill-equipped to handle it. I think what happened was they just got down and dirty, and they needed, in their minds, to do what they needed to do.
Fight fire with fire.
Yes. Now, I don't agree with that. And I was a former police officer or auxiliary police officer, volunteer, and I have cop friends, very close. I love the police department. I get that mentality. I get the mentality we got to eradicate and make sure the cancer doesn't spread.
So you're saying in the course of tuning itself up to battle the corrupt gangs of the 80s, the LAPD itself turned corrupt?
Yeah, to some extent, yes. Not the LAPD. You keep saying LAPD. LAPD is a different department. I'm just talking about Compton Sheriff right now.
Compton Sheriff.
Actually, no, specifically Compton Police, and then the Compton Sheriff. The Compton Police, Tony, were thrown away because of corruption, because of, we did on our last podcast, Suge Knight had a lot of Compton PD officers on his payroll.
For him, yeah.
And so there was a lot of mischief going on, and there was a big black eye in the Compton Police Department. So they got rid of him and they brought in the sheriff, which was basically Coca-Cola Light. That's what I call it. Diet Coke. It's still Coke, not as bad. So essentially,
the distrust. Isn't that like the major issue that underpins all of the police cases that we see on the news?
Yes.
From George Floyd to you name them.
Yes, George Floyd made it worse because you're watching the guy put his knee on his neck for I don't know how, God knows how long, and it's egregious, disgusting behavior.
And it's broadcast. It's the number one most viewed probably police interaction of that year.
And do you know that when I was doing this 15 years ago, nobody believed that police officers could do things like that. Tony, one of my cases, the Casares case, you guys can look it up, Casares and Moreno, we got a $4.5 million verdict. After the police officers accused my clients, 12, Bell Gardens Police Department, horrible at the time, corrupt, just gang officers that are gang members, in my opinion. Again, in their mind, they're probably going to say, you're a scumbag lawyer, you don't know what you're talking about, we're doing our job. That's going to be their thing. I understand that. From their point of view, they might be doing their job, but the problem is they beat up the wrong guys. My guy was beat up at a Halloween party. His father, who was 60 years old, got beat up at a Halloween party.
Did he have a gun because of the costume?
Nothing. They allege that my client took a chair and threw it at the police officers. You know how I got a not guilty verdict? I asked them, where's the chair? I walked around the courtroom. Where's the chair?
Right.
I honestly said that.
Okay.
Because I pointed they were lying. There was no chair.
Really?
They made the whole thing up.
Holy.
They shot my client with pellet bags in the chest, blew his chest out. Then they put him in a car. They turn on the heat to 100 degrees and they bake him in the car. All a part of the torture that we assessed. So what happened was, going back to judges, okay, how bad judges are. Nobody could believe that police officers could do that.
What, like, for instance, what Derek Chauvin did in front of
Yeah,
everybody.
and by the way, I'm going to name drop right now. The prosecutor in the case, Sean Cohen, the one that prosecuted my clients, that didn't believe that my clients were innocent, the same Sean Cohen that I gave every single piece of information to, showing that my clients didn't do it, witnesses, videos, everything. He didn't care. And guess what happened? After I kicked his ass in court and I got a not guilty and made, because of him, because of Sean Cohen, the Bell Gardens Police Department had to pay $4.5 million out of their pocket. And they made Sean Cohen a judge. They made Sean Cohen a judge. This prosecutor that had it all wrong, the guy that has no caliber as to what's right and what's wrong, they put on the bench to decide your case. Now tell me, how the hell does that happen? I'll tell you how that happened.Is dad's a judge. His dad's a judge.
So there's a little bit of cronyism in there, maybe?
Cronyism, disgusting.
Some corruption, political
How does somebody
maneuvering?
that prosecutes two innocent people and threatens to put them in prison for 9 years and then sees all this innocent information and still, despite that innocent information, still prosecute and then lose the case and then turn around and be a judge? How does that happen? So again, I explained to you that back in the day, people didn't believe it. When I brought it to Sean Cohen, he was like, oh, why would they do that? Why would they do that? He actually asked me that. Why would the police department? Oh, come on, Mr. Manuelian. You want the jury to believe that 4 police officers just randomly jumped on your client. He didn't do anything wrong. And your brother-in-law, the father-in-law didn't do anything wrong. I said, yeah. They mistake my client basically was helping the police department at the time evacuate everybody, which is weird because my client got beat up by the same cop that he was helping. So when they were at a Halloween party, basically what happened was the cop was like, everybody get out of here, everybody get out of here. And my client was like, I'll help you. Next thing you know, cop punches him in the face. Right. When the cop punched him in the face, the other cops see this going on and they say, hey.
They pile on. But let me understand. Was it a misunderstanding?
It was a misunderstanding.
So the cop asked him to leave. He instead offered to help. I
think what happened was, I can't believe I'm going to do this. I'm going to defend the cop now because I think I know what happened.
Well, it's good to see the policeman's point of view.
I do, but what he did was still dirty and corrupt. He's still a liar. But this is what happened. I think he mistaked my guy for somebody else that was giving him lip service because we had witnesses there.
I got you.
That said that somebody was saying F you and F you. And when my client came back, he punched my guy thinking it was the other guy.
And then at that point, he was committed.
Meleeed at that point.
And then he was committed to that decision.
He was committed to that decision.
That's him. I didn't make a mistake.
Right. I didn't make it exactly.
Back to Derek Chauvin for a sec, because now it's so much more likely that the average person on the street would believe a claim of police misconduct.
Yeah.
I'm a massive fan of the police, and as I've explained before, the overall system in which they coexist in the criminal justice system, I'm a fan of it all. But now, because of this, not just George Floyd, but dozens of other cases that have been publicized, we all can easily believe police brutality. Do you have an opinion as a veteran in this field, as an expert of criminal mind or so? Do you have an opinion of what Derek Chauvin was thinking? Just your opinion, your expert opinion. You didn't defend him in this case. You don't have you don't have a horse in the race here. What was going through his head? Is he really a racist? That got the number one attention of the country. Is he on a power trip of some kind? What the hell? Like,
I'm not a psychologist, so I'm not going to say from that point of view. But
right.
But watching the video, what I found interesting was his arrogant attitude. He's looking at everybody, doesn't care what anybody says, doesn't care that this person is dying. He's very, very arrogant, which means to me that he believes he has power. The same kind of Compton sheriff power that I was talking about. You can't do anything to me. What are you going to do about it?
Right.
He had that kind of attitude. And that's the attitude that was in the Compton Police Department. In my Bell Gardens, Norwalk trial, that attitude was what was encircling my life in 20 years ago.
Okay, let's stay on him for a second, because what I find really fascinating about the criminal law that we have here is that it's not just the action that Derek Chauvin had of the knee on the neck.
Right.
It's not the only element. It's the mens rea. It's the
callousness.
mental, but it's that mental component to get the conviction at the level you want as a prosecutor. So we really do have to try to get into his head a little. What was he thinking?
No.
What was his intent?
It doesn't have to have intent. That intent is the specific intent and reckless disregard for human life are two different ways you could convict somebody for murder. I could point a gun at you and shoot you. That was my intent. Or I could get really upset at you and punch you really hard in the face, and then you die, and that could be murder too. That's reckless disregard. For example, if I'm a Taekwondo expert and I didn't realize, that I shouldn't have done that.
You momentarily forget that punching someone in the face can actually cause them to fall backwards and die.
Yeah.
If their head hits the curb or something. That could be
happen.
reckless
disregard for human life.
It wasn't intentional.
That's right.
So we're analyzing these mental levels, right?
And what Derek Chauvin did was reckless disregard for human life.
Is that what he was convicted of?
I believe so.
Okay. Reckless. So it's sort of like is
Wanton
that a murder 2 or something? A murder 3, manslaughter?
Well, every state has it differently.
Yeah.
And I can't tell you.
Yeah, they number them differently.
It's different. They have different classes of felonies.
We know it's not the number 1 level of premeditated voluntary murder.
No.
We know it's not there. Is it level
I think,
lower?
you know what? I'll take it back. I believe they did initially charge him with a higher charge, and then they reduced it. But don't quote me on that.
Maybe they did charge him with intentional, but not premeditated.
I'm not sure.
It's clearly not premeditated. He didn't know he was going to run into George Floyd that day.
No, but I can make an argument as a prosecutor that he knew by sticking his neck on his knee on his neck that he should have known that he was going to die. That could be intent.
How early does that premeditation generally have to come? If it's premeditated,
It could be a split second under the law.
Is that right?
Yeah. So right now, you and I are talking.
Wow.
And then I just shoot you right now.
But it could be, so the jury would have to decide, did RJ premeditate that move where he lifted the gun and killed Tony? Or did he do it really in the moment in a reactive way under the passion of the discussion? Right?
So this is the way the prosecutor tells the jury. You're on the highway. You click on your left signal. You've already spelled out your intent to move to the left lane. That was the overt act.
So in your situation, that might be glancing at your gun and then glancing back at me. Where it's like, oh, the decision was made there. Boom, grab the gun, shoot. That's premeditated
Not the
murder.
glancing, the grabbing. The overt act has to be something towards a physical manifestation where a crime will occur. So the physical and that's not the law, but I'm just letting you know that's what the law expects. So grabbing a gun certainly could be that.
Right. And this is under murder, right? It's just always been fascinating to me.
Any charge.
All the
Any specific intent charge. Specific intent means you have you wanted something to occur based on an action that you put forward. You point a gun, you pull the trigger, you intended to kill him. Now, another argument can be made. I never intended to kill you. I didn't have any bullets in there. I was just trying to scare you. I didn't know.
Yes.
That would go to specific intent. You'd have to tell that to a jury. And if a jury believed you, you might walk on a lesser charge of voluntary manslaughter.
Right. It's still some kind. Is that reckless or is that?
Let me think about it. Yeah, I think it would be voluntary manslaughter because if it's a real gun, you should have known that there's a possibility of a bullet in there. Maybe not. It could be negligent homicide.
Like rule number 1 of being an ethical gun owner is not to aim the gun at anybody.
Course, yes.
So if you're breaking that rule, you're already
negligent.
Yeah.
That's negligent homicide right away. Whether it rises to a higher level of homicide, I'm not certain at this point.
Right.
I'd have to know a little bit more about it.
I remember reading about, it's fascinating, the crazy defenses that people have come up with in the past.
Did you ever hear of the Twinkie defense?
Tell me about it.
You didn't hear about the Twinkie defense?
I know about it, but I want to talk about it.
So some lawyer thought that he could introduce, tell the jury that his client went crazy from eating too many Twinkies. Apparently he ate like 40 boxes of Twinkies before he killed somebody or something, and they said it was because of the Twinkies.
Honestly, you could go insane due to that much sugar, could you not? I mean, in some level?
I don't know, but I didn't even know they made Twinkies anymore.
They brought them back.
They did?
A company bought that Hostess set of brands.
Are cupcakes back too?
I think they're bringing all those.
So all the unhealthy stuff from the 80s are back?
They're bringing them back. Somebody's making a lot of money turning that around, and it was sort of a defunct brand, and people forgot about it, and somebody bought it and put it into turnaround. So That's what I read. But defenses like the Twinkie defense are trying to say, yes, he killed her.
But it was because he went crazy because he ate so many Twinkies, and
he did intend to kill her as well, because he certainly lifted his hand. Let's just hypothetically say he lifted his hand and fired the gun.
Right.
But that intent was clouded. It was clouded by a sugar high.
It didn't work.
It didn't work.
No, I think the jury came back. There are a lot of very creative defenses. I've seen a lot of very good murder cases. You know, as a hobby, I go watch murder cases and watch real murder cases in court. That's my basketball.
Wow.
When I sit in front of the jury, I'm on the 50-yard line or right in the middle of the center court in basketball. Yeah. So I've seen really good defenses, like amazing. But it's really hard to convince a jury unless it's compelling.
I've heard of this sleepwalking defense a few times. You know about this one?
I've heard of it.
I don't think you would have come across this in your actual practice, because it seems so far-fetched. It's more of like we read about it in law school.
Yeah.
But it always stuck with me as a fascinating case, horrifying case.
Yeah.
Where like, I mean, this is really graphic, but like a mom wakes up in the middle of the night, true case. It's an American case. Probably, I'm just going to guess 30 or 40 years old, maybe by now. And she wakes up, or how should I say this? Let me say this differently. A woman dreams, has a horrifying, weird dream in which bats, I think I'm remembering this correctly, bats are swarming her bed. And for some reason, she's got like a sharp knife or a machete or some kind of crazy object like that. And she swings them at the bats and kills the bats, and then gets out of bed, finds a bat, drops the bat, and like these bats are swarming, and kills them all. And then she wakes up and she's actually standing over her child, and she's macheted or stabbed her child to death. Horrifying. I mean, crazy graphic. She's killed her child. But in that case, and I may have gotten the facts slightly wrong, but not that wrong, I'm sure, they ended up getting an acquittal. She was not convicted because she literally did not intend to do that act. She was killing bats in a dream, but she was, what's it called? Lucid dreaming, or, you know, sleep, like wake dreaming, where you actually walk around.
What that means to me is if she was acquitted, they had an excellent forensic psychologist, because the only person that could explain all that is a forensic psychologist. And by the way, I have an amazing one. His name is Dr. Hy Malinek in Beverly Hills. And
to explain what exactly?
What the mind was. He talks about your mindset and what you were thinking about and what was going on. He explains to the jury whether
like the jury has to believe she was in a sleep dream.
And that's where the forensic psychologist would explain that she wasn't awake. She was truly in a subconscious. And if the jury believes that forensic psychologist, you walk because you didn't mean to do it.
Right. But other kind of mental states like that, do you ever run? I mean, there's crime of passion, right?
Of course.
Many people hear about this, like that if somebody ends up committing a horrifying murder, but they caught their wife in bed with somebody else.
Yeah, that's actually case law that we read in law school. So if you walk into
Is it real, or is it just a
It's real because there's no cooling off period. So if you're going to kill somebody in cold blood, that's murder. But if you kill somebody in the heat of passion.
Right.
Sounds like a sexy movie, right? In the heat of passion.
It's sexy, but just not for you.
Not for you. And so if you walk in and you hear some moaning going on in that room and you creak the door open and you see your wife and she's got her legs up in the air and it's another guy and your blood starts to boil and you're getting really pissed and you take out the gun and you shoot both of them and you kill both of them, you're not going to be charged with murder. Because what happened now is you weren't making a conscious decision where you specifically intended to kill them. You did it based on heat of passion.
We're not encouraging people to go out and do this.
Well, you can't make it up. It's got to be a heat of passion, which means it's got to be based on circumstance.
Was the gun in your pocket?
I guess if you're a police officer, you'd have the gun in your pocket.
What would
or security guard or anybody in Texas?
In that exact case, if I were the man, unfortunately walking in to this really unfortunate.
And by the way, I set the details up purposely to get you upset like that.
Yeah, I would be hugely upset.
Right.
Most husbands would absolutely have a convulsion if they walked in on the scene.
I don't even know how, and most people, I don't know how I would react. I don't know what's the protocol for that.
I'm not sure I would pull a gun out and shoot them both. That sounds insane.
But you could be really really, really pissed.
I don't think I could accurately gauge where my mind would be in that.
How about if it was your enemy, like somebody you hated that your wife was sleeping and you had a gun?
Even worse.
You could have killed. You could have killed.
Even worse. But if the gun was in the other room and I had to back away and go,
that's a better argument. So is there cooling off? That's a jury question.
If I went and got the gun,
the jury decides whether
and then loaded the gun. No, seriously.
No, I'm being serious.
And then maybe, I don't know. Now let's get real ominous. I put on some gloves. I mean, now we're getting crazy.
Now the gloves are
bad.
The gloves to me means you're thinking. It means you're specifically intending to kill.
Right. This is no longer a crime of passion.
It could have been without the gloves. If you walk to your room and you're still pissed and you walk back, you can make an argument. Now the gloves threw you away. If I was the prosecutor, I'd say you're toast at that point.
This is an assassination at this point.
At that point. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, as soon as Tony put on the gloves, that was specific intent. That would be the argument.
Let's rewind. No gloves.
No
I'm
gloves.
standing there in the doorway. I see them. I'm freaking out.
Yeah.
I don't have a gun on me because I'm not a police officer.
Yeah.
But I do know where my gun is and I can get it. So I run up the stairs. I fingerprint my safe. I grab my gun. I run back down and I'm firing. I'm just shooting.
Okay, so
we can argue that that's a crime of passion still.
You would have to argue that.
I would.
You'd have to
say I ran up the stairs and ran back down. My heart's still going 150
So I would ask you, Tony, how did you feel? Let me do a typical cross. Tony, when you opened that room, what did you see?
I saw a horrifying sight of this situation.
How did that make you feel?
Small, helpless, angry, and
angry. How angry, Tony? On a scale of 1 to 10, how angry?
I mean, I could just kill anyone in that moment.
Would you say it was a 10 on the 10 scale on anger?
Yes, beyond a 10.
Beyond a 10. Yeah. Well, let me ask you, Tony, when you
I was shaking. I couldn't even think. I was like flush red, I think.
What was your number when you went to get your gun?
What number?
Were you still at a 10 as far as anger is concerned? When you were,
what was my number?
Yeah.
I feel like it was increasing as I was running up the stairs because the image was like imprinted in my mind.
And then when you went,
I tried it for a second. I actually remember thinking, it's not possible. Like, there's no way you actually just saw that. But then telling myself, don't be an idiot. It's real. Trust your eyes. You did see what you saw.
So you're still angry,
freaking out. Like,
and the way back you're running, you're still angry. You're still a 10.
I almost tripped down the stairs.
So what you identified right now, you just did a testimony. The jury would assess that. And if they believed you, they go back and say, Tony said that he was real pissed. Did you believe that? Yeah, man. He said, I felt it. He said he was a 10 when he went up. He was a 10 when he was down as far as anger is concerned. If they believe you, you get a voluntary manslaughter.
Does it mean if one of them believes me or if all 12 of them believe me?
Well, all 12 of them have to believe you to convict you.
Okay.
But if one of them believes you not to convict you, that could be two.
Okay. Very fair. I mean, I don't know if that's fair. You don't want people shooting people even out of crimes of passion.
No,
but
to
mitigate the punishment.
You know why that law was passed? Because you wouldn't have done it in a lifetime, and you were provoked. There was a provocation.
Got it.
There's an underlying provocation.
Got it. You're not a threat to society.
So you were provoked, and it wasn't an intentional provoke, but you were still nonetheless provoked, right?
Right.
Let me give you another example. Let's just say I show you a picture of your daughter, God forbid, being raped.
Oh my God.
Okay?
I mean.
All right. Now I show you the person that did it, and I give you a gun. What are you going to do?
So.
I provoked you. I provoked you, and you're going to go kill him. You have provocation now. Do you see what I'm saying? You would not have done it had I not told you that. And by the way, if I lied to you and made that up and you killed him, I could possibly be liable for that as well. But I provoked you. You wouldn't have done it. I'm giving you an example, an extreme example.
So the jury would mitigate my punishment in that case.
Yes, they would say that idiot RJ gave the information to him and that caused him. And by the way, can I tell you a great example of voluntary manslaughter? In Connecticut, this actually happened. I believe it was in Connecticut. A family law attorney, and I know this because I'm a news junkie. I read the news 24 hours a day.
Okay.
So he came home and his mom and his wife was crying. And his boy was crying. And he came on and he's like, what's wrong? He knew something was wrong. He said the neighbor raped his son.
Okay.
Guess what the lawyer did? He got a big butcher knife. He jumped out of his window, jumped into his window, and he stabbed him to death. Killed him.
Avenging the death of his own son.
No, his son was never killed. He was raped. He killed the guy that raped his son. I would do the same thing. I would fucking kill that guy. But I go to jail too. Just like that guy. I would have done the same thing. I would have killed him. The difference is I would ask my lawyer to get me 9 years as a voluntary manslaughter instead of life. I would pay the piper. I'd be happy to do that. Okay? So what did that guy do? He did the same thing, and then he got arrested for murder, and his lawyer was able to say what I said. Wouldn't you do the same if your son was raped? Well, how much cooling time did he have before he went and killed him?
None, right?
Zero.
He jumped out the window with a knife.
His son was crying. His son was crying. His wife was crying. He came to that home, Tony. He had no time. He was so upset.
But what if he was wrong?
It's still provocation. It's still voluntary manslaughter. As long as you're able to show the jury that you were provoked and you could articulate that, yes, it's voluntary manslaughter. So that's another example.
Right.
Make sense?
Yeah, I mean, it seems like it's there to protect the accused. Again,
yes.
Another one of those scenarios that's there to protect us as citizens if we do get accused of a crime. That, the unanimous conviction requirement by the jury, right?
Yeah.
Some kind of due process that's afforded us.
Yep.
The ability to stay silent and not say anything.
Yes. And the ability to tell the jury your story. If you want to tell your story, they'll look at you and they'll listen to you, and if they believe you, they might let you go.
So that's
what other country can you do that in?
Probably some that have copied our system.
Israel.
Yeah.
France. I'm not sure.
We're talking about the constitutional right to face your accuser.
I think Israel has a similar system,
and to be told of the charges against you.
Yes.
To be not held unreasonably.
Right.
A speedy trial.
Yes, but isn't that interesting about how everything in criminal law is about just stopping and minimizing your damage, right? Not talking to the police, getting the right lawyer, and also being realistic. You know, when you get most people that come to my office, you know, when they say, my son killed this person or that person, I ask them, well, what do you want me to do? Are you saying he's innocent? Or are you saying that he may have been involved and you just wanted me to minimize his time? Most of them tell me, I think he might have done it because he's hanging out with bad kids. And then I look at it from that perspective and I try to help them. But
is it better if they tell you? I mean, I'm assuming it's always better to be truthful.
Always better. You always want to tell your lawyer every single thing that you know and then some.
Okay.
Because
that's good advice. Everybody listen up to that.
Because number one, you're going to hurt yourself and shoot yourself in the foot if you don't tell your lawyer, because he's going to lose an opportunity to defend you and get certain things for you to get you out of trouble. But he's not going to be able to do that if you don't tell him everything, right?
So trust the person whose job it is to defend you in the legal system.
Or get another lawyer. You have to trust your lawyer.
If you don't like or trust them,
go to somebody else, like another doctor, get another doctor, lawyer, and you go to him and you tell him everything.
Tell him everything.
And once they do that, you will be able to defend them better. So in a murder case, I go up and say, so why'd you kill him? And they'll be honest with me most of the times, very...
Wait, you go up to the accused who's hiring you to be there, and you just start off the conversation saying, why'd you do it?
I say, what's your position? And if they say, I effed up, how'd you F up? And they'll tell me I was hanging out with these guys and this is what went down and this is what went down and I was there. Okay.
And I'm assuming that conversation with you is protected under the law, right?
Course.
It's
Any
privileged. It's privileged. And people may wonder, why would you want to privilege a criminal who's just killed someone from...
He's not a criminal.
Well, an accused person who has just potentially, allegedly committed a crime. Why would you want to protect their confession to their own attorney? Why would you ever protect a confession? I mean, that's a confession. But I think the policy here that we have structured in this criminal justice system is that you want to incentivize them to tell the truth to their attorney.
So they could properly represent you.
Yeah. So you want the truth to be vetted in that privatized conversation between them and their lawyer that no one else has to ever hear.
Yeah, because if they don't tell you the truth and you lose the case and they appeal it, then it could also be my fault. They could say, well, why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do that? And I could turn around and say, I didn't know. He didn't tell me that. That's why I asked for all the information up front.
Okay.
And it's almost like going to a doctor. If you've got pain, you got to show the doctor where your pain is. You just can't say, I have pain somewhere, figure it out.
Right. If you think about it, it's an incredibly designed system. It's like even that person who probably has committed a crime gets to have this moment of quiet, private consultation with an expert in the law and then gets their hand held and guided through the legal system. Perhaps to conviction, if that's what's needed.
I go through the whole thing.
But you don't convict. You just guide them through the system, and I'm assuming you must take any effort. Aren't you obligated by duty to take every possible effort to defend them and get them off the charges.
Absolutely. Yeah, I take an oath. Everybody takes an oath to do that. And I don't want you to think of it as I'm getting a guilty person off. My job is to make sure the government did their job.
That's right. You're the check and balance.
That's right.
On the prosecutor,
yes,
right?
That's it. That's all I do.
But that's amazing.
That's all I do. I don't want anybody to think I get murderers off, I get rapists off, I get trauma. I don't do that. I make sure if you're being accused, I see the evidence, and if it makes sense, I speak it over with my client. We get a deal. If there's a lot of evidence, if there's not a lot of evidence, I'll see you in trial. That's how it works. Make sense?
Yeah. And I think we're getting close to the end here. I know I got to run soon, but I want to try to close with some kind of notion of hope here in terms of this problem with the distrust with the police that we talked about. Mm-hmm. We all sense it. We all can believe easily now when there's been police abuse, more easily than perhaps we could as a collective society 10 or 20 years ago. We find it really easy to believe now that police can abuse their power. The black community seems to have more distrust, if I may. I hope I'm not speaking out of line. That's my perception, that they seem to have more
rightfully
anger, distrust, mistrust.
Let's say minorities.
Minorities.
And rightfully so.
Not all minorities. I don't think Asians necessarily fear the police that much.
That could be the exception.
It could be. But I mean, Armenians, do we really fear the police more?
If you talk to Armenians in Glendale, they might tell you something else.
In some communities, yes. In Compton, where you know as a fact from trying cases that there's more distrust of the system.
Again, there was distrust.
There was. Do you feel like today that distrust persists? It seems like it does.
It does, but not as bad. I'm going to defend the Compton sheriff right now. They are better.
They are better factually. Do the people perceive that?
Not so much.
How do we fix that? Is it just doing interviews with police officers?
Yes.
How do they show their true colors that they're not racist, hateful people? How?
So they do that. They have community policing, and I go to this sometimes in Compton. There's a Compton chapter where the NAACP and NAJA, the National Association for Equal Justice in America. I got it. NAJA and NAACP, they host it. They call me, and they have the sheriffs come to a school. I think it was Compton High School. And we meet at the high school, and the whole community shows up, and the sheriffs and I'm actually on the same table as the sheriff's department that I sued. So we all sit next to each other in unity to help the community. We are there. I'm there representing them or helping them. I'm telling them, I'm here for you too, and I'm here to voice your concerns to them and explain to you. So
that's interesting. You've done this?
Many times.
So you've gone into a high school in the community?
I do it 2-3 times a year.
To help educate the young people about the police?
Yes, through NAJA, National Association for Equal Justice in America, and the NAACP. Mike Turner, who used to head it down. Lately, I haven't.
That sounds cool.
It's very cool. You know what's cool about it?
Do the kids buy it?
Well, it's the mothers. The mothers come. It's all mothers. It's amazing. Mothers and fathers are coming.
Because
they complain. They complain about the arrests. Why are you arresting? Why are you hassling? And the sheriffs, they talk to him like, we're working on that, ma'am. It's really cool. If you go to these community policing meetings, they say, we're working on that. And they ask you your name. What's your name? And they say, Shirley. Okay, Shirley, I'm going to look into that for you. I'm going to see what's going on there with your son. So we need to do more of that community policing.
It's that point of contact where the police officer is standing face to face with the suspect, whether they're a suspect of something legitimately or not, depends on the fact pattern. They are in an interaction with the police officer. It seems like however small the percentage is, it's still too great a number of where those interactions go bad.
True. But it can never be perfect.
It will never be perfect. Can we improve that number? You sound like the police department is doing their part to try to make some outreach to the community. Does it take the leaders in the community to speak out on behalf of police more? How do you get the community to trust police? Is it just a latent effect that is going to take decades and we can't do anything about it?
I think it takes leadership and time.
In both communities.
Yes, right? Leadership and time. They're doing it in Compton. I was a part of that during the time of the civil rights trials that I did.
Yeah.
And truthfully, I don't distrust the Compton Sheriff's Department. I just think there are a bunch of young police officers that should be trained properly, that they're not trained properly. I think that's a part of the problem. But it's gotten a lot better, Tony. It wasn't like it used to be. I remember there was so much distrust that we couldn't even pick a jury because everybody would raise their hand when they asked who distrusted the Compton sheriff. Everybody would raise their hand. It would be so hard to get somebody, but it's not like that anymore. Now more people are, what we need to do is we need to get young blood. We need to get people from that community, in my opinion. Compton sheriff should be from Compton, so you understand the community. So when I see you as a badge, oh, Tony, you were my friend in high school. What's going on,
You
Tony?
got to kind of belong there.
You got to belong there. They should be hiring and educating locally for sensitivity, cultural sensitivity, as well as empathy. Because if I'm going to arrest somebody in my neighborhood, I'm probably going to know somebody, and I'm probably going to analyze it a little bit better than some callous cop that doesn't live in my neighborhood, that doesn't like me because, you know, they think I'm a gang member.
How often does that happen now, the local aspect?
I haven't gone because I've had a lot of trials.
So there's still too many police.
They do it
outside?
once every 4 months. They do it, I think, quarterly. So I think they do it 4 times. I used to go 4 times a year.
But what I meant to ask is, how often are the police from the local community themselves hired in the local?
I don't know the answer to that question, but I could tell you it's probably, based on my experience, probably not a lot because of the way that some of these people are being treated. It just seems to me like if you were from that neighborhood, you wouldn't be treating your community the same.
Okay, a harder question to ask here. What can the community itself do, the citizens do, to behave better when in a situation of arrest? You even brought a fact pattern up where somebody high up in the NAACP came by and said, yo, hey, you can't do that, stop.
Right.
Should that be something that you do to an arresting officer?
I recommend
that might be a bad move when someone's
very bad. You don't. First of all, you could get arrested for that.
So that in itself is misbehavior that I can objectively look at and say probably not the best move. Of course, we can dig and say hold on
though. You could say that, but what would you do if you saw 2 people beaten on the street really badly by the police, and you were watching for a while and this didn't make sense?
Okay, I'm going to be honest.
As a human being, you would either call the police, call somebody else, or videotape it. Those are your options.
If they're beating them and it literally seems like it's actually abuse, and you have to call it out. You have to videotape it, and you have to say something, which is what everybody did.
With Chauvin also. With
everybody did.
Yelling him. Right.
Literally
So that's the answer. You do the Derek Chauvin treatment.
In the Chauvin case, the crowd alerted him to their unhappiness.
That's right. That's what you do. That's
what you do.
That's
you
what
protest.
You protest. And in Derek Chauvin's case, every single one of those protesters came, cried, and testified that they didn't listen to him.
Right.
That he didn't listen to them.
And when
so that's what you do. Now, here's one thing that you could do to cure 90% of arrests, I believe, and nobody really wants to listen to this. Even if you get a jerk cop, just be respectful. If you be respectful,
that's what I'm trying to get at.
If you just I would even say be overly respectful and unnecessarily respectful. What do I mean by that? Try to add a lot of thank yous and sirs into your conversation.
And I'm 100%.
It goes a million miles away. You have no idea.
I'm so certain that many young men, let's say in Compton today, do that exactly. I bet you.
They do, but some of them don't.
Now, we don't hear about those because those don't go horribly wrong. And maybe
only the ones that they don't do go horribly wrong.
I think so.
Like my clients that said, why the hell would I do that? Got beat up.
Right.
Get out of the car. Why do I need to do that? They get beat up.
See, this tendency of some percentage of the citizenry to question the arresting officer's commands.
Right.
It's like a recipe for disaster.
Well, hold on. Sometimes you do have to ask. Sometimes it's okay. You have a legal right to say, may I ask why? You could say it nicely. You don't have to say, why the F why? You could say, may I ask why?
Why I'm being arrested or detained? Am I being arrested?
Right. Am I being arrested? Am I being detained? Those are the 2 questions
you can ask those questions.
So no? And am I being detained? No? Then you salute them and you go. You drive away. And you could literally drive away while the cop is looking at your face.
And give us some advice here. If they answer yes, you're being detained.
Okay. What am I being detained for?
And I'm going to ask you some questions now.
No, you're not. I'm not going to answer any questions. He's not allowed to ask you questions if he's detaining you. He's got to give you Miranda rights. If you're in custody, which is a detainment, okay, if you're not free to leave and is questioning you, Miranda takes place.
Got it.
Or your Messiah rights, if you want to look at that.
I didn't know the Messiah word. What's that?
Yeah, it's analogous to Miranda.
Was it before Miranda?
It was about the same time, yeah.
Okay, so that set of rights kicks in, and the officer is obligated to tell you at that moment, hey, these are the rights you have. You don't have to speak. You have the right to remain silent. You have the right to an attorney.
Yes.
All of that.
Yes. And then he could ask you questions.
And then your advice, I'm sure, at that moment is stay silent.
Yes, I want to talk to my lawyer. But most people don't have lawyers.
What do most people say, though? They don't stay silent. They're like, sir, I don't know what's going on. I didn't do anything.
That's right. I didn't do anything. I don't know what you're talking about. What? That person? I wasn't with that person. And they start talking and talking and talking, and they say something wrong, even though it's not.
One little thing they say.
Even though it's not untruthful, it's wrong. Like he could say, you know, for example, yeah, like yesterday it was raining, and the cops say, well, it wasn't raining yesterday, so you must be lying.
That's
it.
It's
like, well, no, I'm sorry, I messed up. It wasn't raining.
So,
it's like one little thing.
So when you start blabbing, when you start opening your mouth in that high stress situation, when you're under detainment by the police, when you start speaking, you're going to have diarrhea of the mouth potentially, right? You're going to just start spewing stuff. And you might, as you just said, something you say is going to be factually incorrect.
Could be. Why take a chance?
Why take a chance? Yeah. So that's why you would advise it's just not a smart move at that moment.
But it's so hard when you get pulled over and a cop says, get out, put your hands behind your back, I'm arresting you. Do you have any idea how hard it is just to be quiet, not to say anything, to go all the way?
It seems impossible.
But do you know who does do that?
Tell me.
The people that get arrested a lot. I don't want to call them career criminals, but that's what prosecutors call them.
They
have experience. They know not to talk. Most people that are a part of the dark world or the underworld, they know not to talk to the police. Everybody knows that. But the newbies, the people that are green, the people that are going to get arrested for the first time, they don't know.
So is it fair for me to encapsulate that by saying you're in the community, you're having an interaction with the police officer, to try to make that interaction go well, be overly respectful.
I believe so.
Understand that this person, let's assume they have nothing against you. Now they might. There's a tiny sliver of a chance that they're a hateful, racist bigot. Chances are, though, if you're going to roll the dice probabilistically, they're probably just a normal police officer. They don't know you necessarily. They have a job to do. And if you have to be arrested because of the certain fact pattern that they're perceiving, you need to kind of let the arrest take place. They're not going to hurt you, most likely, if you cooperate. Am I correct?
You're right, but nobody wants to go into that car. That's the problem. Do you want to go into a police car? Do you want to go into a dark cell for 8 hours and wait to be processed? That's why people talk.
I don't believe that I would think that I have a choice in that situation.
Some people think they have a choice by explaining their story away.
But see, this is where we want to get the community to understand. Anybody out there who's at risk of having an interaction with a police officer. Maybe that means you're living in a certain community where that happens a lot. Maybe it means you're out late at night driving in a dirty car.
Right.
Maybe it means you've got a cracked windshield and they tend to like pull people like that over. I don't know why, but they tend to do that. They look for broken windows.
They just need any kind of violation to investigate. It's called an investigatory stop.
So if you're in that situation and having an interaction, just appreciate the fact that that person across from you is just doing their job.
100%.
And so be overly respectful for them.
Agreed.
And if they determine that it's time to make an arrest,
then let them do their job.
Can you talk them out of the arrest ever?
No.
So continue to be polite, but what? Just shut your mouth at that point?
You know what I tell my clients? This is my saying: kill them with kindness.
Kill them with kindness.
That's right. Just be super kind. Thank you, officer. Have a good day, officer. Stay safe, officer.
And therefore...
And they'll treat you with the same respect, and thereby minimizing the chances of you getting arrested. And the officer has the discretion not to arrest you in misdemeanor cases, so he could just cite you out. Even felony cases, sometimes they could have certain discretion depending on what the felony charge is.
Right.
But you give all that up when you start being mean to the officer. He's almost like a customer. You want to make the customer happy, so the customer goes away, if that makes sense.
Right. Well, you're in an interaction with them and you have no choice. At some point, you have to understand the law has now taken over.
Yeah.
Actually, your instant freedom in this moment is gone. You do not enjoy freedom in this moment because you're suspected of a crime.
If you're detained, you're right.
And you're being detained by this police officer. So you're kind of going into the, if I could put it the best case possible way, you're entering into the warm bosom of the legal system.
Yeah.
Let them take you. Go there. And you're going to have a chance to tell us your side of the case.
Not only that, but they'll release you without any bail, lower bail if you do that. Do you know that? Sorry to cut you off.
Tell me they'll release you.
If you don't argue with them, the bail will be less. They won't add charges. And they might even release you on your own recognizance, which means no money. They might let you go. So being nice to them up front does have its benefits.
Does that depend on where you are? Like in LA, they're going to release you more easily than in Dallas?
I can't speak for Texas, but yes, there are certain cells that are more packed that release people a lot quicker than other cells.
Central
jail is pretty packed?
Because we hear this complaint a lot. I certainly hear this from fellow citizens on Nextdoor. I hear this in the city of LA a lot. We hear it from people who are public intellectuals. We've gone too liberal with our crime policy, with our prosecutor. DA Gascon gets a lot of slack for being weak on crime, for I guess introducing or at least popularizing or effectuating no cash bail. Have we gone too far? Is it too liberal? Are we letting people out too easily here in LA?
I will answer that question by telling you what my clients say. We love coming to LA to burglarize because you guys go easy on us.
Is that real?
Yep.
People say that.
Yes. I'm a criminal defense attorney. I defend many burglars and burglary gangs in Los Angeles and Fresno, and they tell me.
So this is anecdotal. You're one guy, but
you could ask any criminal defense attorney, and this is not me. They'll tell you people are coming from out of town to come into Los Angeles because they know they could smash and grab and get a slap on the wrist.
Personally, you're my buddy, and it's anecdotal, but I trust it. And so I want people out there to hear this. Citizens of LA, okay? Yeah. We have a criminal defense attorney sitting here saying to us that people are telling him that it's a sort of a magnet, a paradise for them to come here and commit crime because of
For first-time offenders.
Because of our overly lenient policy.
Right. So they're getting first-time offenders everywhere. Grandmothers, mothers, doesn't matter. You get go get a bag, go get whatever. You're probably not going to get prosecuted.
Is this changing anytime soon?
Yes, when Eric Sadal gets elected for district attorney or John McKinney, one of those two.
Okay, so we should at least encourage people, and I'm not taking sides. I don't really know any of these people. You do, but at least people should do their homework, right?
Yep.
And look into who the district attorney of LA is. Do we want to keep the one we have? Do we like what's going on the streets? If not, we do have some power to affect change, right? By voting a new DA in.
You have to vote the new DA in. I'm telling you, I'm on the inside. My clients who are being accused of this horrible things you're seeing on television are telling me we are coming to Los Angeles County because you have a lot of love here. You know what a lot of love means? It means I ain't going to go to jail. There ain't no love in Fresno. There's not love in Tulare County. Maybe not even in Orange County or Ventura, but LA loves everybody. Now, why does LA love everybody? Because of the policies of the district attorney's office on these low-end crimes where they're really not prosecuting because they believe in rehabilitation. But guess what? That's not working.
When is that election?
Not sure. You tell me.
Okay, so people can look it up. Yeah. But you've given your thoughts on who the next DA should be. I just encourage everybody to do their homework, look into it.
Yes.
Find out when that election is and get behind.
And just look. Ask yourself a question: Were people doing smash and grab crimes just 5-6 years ago? Was this happening? Were people walking into Nordstrom's in the middle of the day and just taking things off? The answer is no.
Heck no.
So what changed? The only thing changed was Jackie Lacey was the former DA, lost the election. Gascon came in with his progressive policies, and I'm a progressive guy, but there are limits, and the guy was way overboard as far as his policies. And I'm telling you, I'm a criminal defense attorney, so if a criminal defense attorney doesn't endorse Gascon, there's got to be something wrong.
Can I try to steel man his case for a second? Let me just be him at this table, because he's not.
Sure.
I don't know the guy.
I don't either. I heard he's a nice guy.
I'm going to assume he's going to say something like, and forgive my ignorance because I just don't know and I haven't spoken to him, but I'm going to hypothetically assume that he would say something like, there's systemic problems of imbalanced treatment of certain communities in LA. We're going to now maybe shift that balance in the other direction to try to equalize it over time.
That's exactly what he said.
Is that true?
Almost verbatim.
Is that really?
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yes.
You're not messing with me.
He thinks there's a systematic problem.
Okay.
That there's an innate problem in the system where it's unfair to minorities, and that's why he's enacted these programs. And also, I think he said there was a fiscal aspect to it too. He claimed that it cost more money to house or incarcerate individuals rather than give them a program, which I don't think is true.
But from a utilitarian kind of standpoint, he's almost looking at it, if we look at it philosophically, he's almost saying something like,
the greatest number of good for the greatest number of people.
Like you guys have put too many people away for too long for too small of an offense.
Yeah.
That may be true.
Yes.
We can grant him that.
Right.
And I'm coming into this position of power as a equalizer of sorts, as almost a Robin Hood personality, as someone who's going to set the balance straight. Maybe I'm going to swing the pendulum a little too far. And I don't know if he would say that, but even if it goes a little too far in the counterbalancing direction, I need to do that to correct this systemic imbalance.
And I think that's what it's doing, but it's breaking Los Angeles.
So he's saying, let's let more people out for more crimes more than ever to offset the balance of having put too many away for too many crimes before.
Essentially, I'm for rehabilitation also, and I do believe there are certain crimes that shouldn't be, legal. Smoking marijuana for years, I've been saying that's just a stupid law. Even prostitution, I think, is a stupid law. It's a victimless crime, but that's just me, the progressive side. But the bottom line is that Gascon has gone way overboard. Now, we're not talking about marijuana or prostitution. We're talking about
smash and grabs.
We're talking about your kids in the middle of the day possibly being injured from a gang of thieves coming in, breaking windows, shattering windows, scaring little children. This is America. This isn't the Middle East.
Did you see the video like from 2 days ago on YouTube of the latest on the LA freeway, the latest crime? It was a woman and a man, maybe. For sure, a woman had broken down on the side of the road in a car. Her car, I believe her hood was up. Something indicated the car was broken down, side of the road. You see another car pull up. Somebody's videotaping this. Are they here to help her? You would think. No. 4 or 5 like gray sweater, hoodied like thug types jump out of this car, invade the car, which is broken down, at gunpoint, steal everything out of the car, take the stuff from the woman and the man, whoever was there on the side of the road broken down, basically jack them, take everything they have, get back in the car and take off.
And they were videotaping it.
And somebody else videotaped it. I don't know who.
Yeah, it's trophy. They're called trophy videos. I don't know if you know that.
Somebody might have done that on their side of the team. I don't know.
So a lot of these burglary crews, they're very proud and they actually brag about what they do. And so they have these trophy videos. That's what I call them.
Right.
Where they basically show their skills and how they get in and how they get out.
Right.
And it's going on. You see it. You don't even need those trophy videos. You see those trophy videos on YouTube and on the news.
It feels to me like, I get, and I'm trying to steel man his argument as the DA of why he's been quote unquote so weak on crime as sort of a social justice movement. It just frankly feels like he's doing it from the wrong side of the fence. It would almost be like if he's on the wrong team for that. So he's almost like infiltrated the wrong side. It's bad for the legal system for the wrong interest to be on the wrong side of the fence. My thoughts is that it would be like you as a criminal defense attorney actually having the mind of a prosecutor and believing that there was inequity in the prosecution so far and you needed to increase prosecutions. That would be the inverse. It would be RJ Manuelian in this parallel universe who's a criminal defense attorney but does the opposite of what you actually do, which is say, I need to get more people convicted. And here I am on this side of the fence where my job is to defend them, but I'm going to pull my strings in a way on this side of the fence to have more people go to jail. To me, that's ethically wrong. Isn't that what the DA is currently doing? Because he sits on the side of the fence from where he needs to prosecute. Well, so him throttling prosecutions seems like he's on the wrong side, on the wrong team. That throws off the balance in the legal justice system.
I think this is the first time we're having this social justice experiment. That's what I call it, a social justice experiment. I think Gascon is the first to do this. So again, this might be the lawyer in me. I'm going to defend him too. I'm going to say maybe in his mind, we need to give him more time. Maybe it'll get better. I don't think so. I don't think so because I have insider information from clients that are telling me this is not going to stop. And people are going to keep coming here because it's just not going to be something that the rest of the counties are going to be scared of as far as violating any kind of laws. So I ask you this, if you're a gang member or you're a criminal in any other county and you're going to commit a crime, which county would you commit the crime in first?
Sounds like LA. It's like crime tourism happening. And I think we would be foolish not to understand that people work off of incentives. Every human behaviors come down to incentives. Mm-hmm. And the legal system, the whole point it exists, the whole reason we have a criminal law code is it to incentivize people not to commit crime. So you reduce that incentive and people commit more crime, right? It's kind of like human psychology. It's human behavior. I mean,
It's almost like testing the boundaries, and it's a nonstop test that I don't believe will end. It'll be generational. I don't think the social program is going to work. Frankly.
It seems like his experiment is failing, and it's failing badly in LA. I mean,
horribly.
We see that with our eyes as citizens
100%.
driving around every day, right?
It's the crime has definitely increased. I'll tell you that because crime is my business. And this is good.
And are we supposed to look at past offenses under the law? Can we look at past offenses? I mean, is that reasonable to look at past offenses?
As far as what?
Well, I want to look at his past offense, San Francisco.
Oh, you mean Gascon?
Yeah.
Well, he was a police officer there in San.
He was a district attorney, I thought.
I don't think so.
He was sure about that?
Cop. Yep.
You sure?
Yes, I'm almost positive.
I thought he was the DA up there.
No, I don't think so.
Then
I think Gascon was a police officer. I think he was a police officer up there. That's why when he ran, it was such a big deal over here because he didn't have any DA experience, and he came in with basically with the money from George Soros to just reform the entire LA system. So George Gascon, if you want to know.
I want to know.
All right. Maybe I'm wrong. Hopefully I'm not.
It's so hard to imagine him as a police officer.
Okay, here we go. So, yeah, he was a cop for sure. But before that, so George Gascon.
He was a police officer, so.
Yeah, he's the 43rd DA. Let me see. Was
he not a prosecutor of some kind in San Francisco at all?
No, he was an LAPD police officer, assistant chief to Bratton. And
okay. I was thinking of somebody else. I stand corrected.
He said he was in many positions throughout his career.
Okay.
He was the assistant chief of Los Angeles police officer. He worked in San Francisco as a police officer.
Got it.
Oh, yes, you're right. It says, and a district attorney for San Francisco.
Okay, so I'm right on that point. So he was the DA formerly of
right.
San Francisco.
Yeah.
Okay, this is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
If the guy left a trail of dead back there, I mean,
I think you're right. Now that I remember it, I think they were running these ads showing like what he did to San Francisco, and it said something like LA doesn't want to become San Francisco.
Except that we did want to become like San Francisco because we voted him in. Yeah. We voted him in as a citizen.
And San Francisco is not even San Francisco anymore. It's another, I don't know what it is, Zombieville now. It wasn't what it was in the 60s, 70s, and 80s.
It's an absolute zombie invasion. Everybody's leaving town. But like we voted Gascon in, and then we reaffirmed him when the recall happened because we didn't go for the recall. So it's our fault.
We came close. Well, it's not our fault. Remember, I want you to remember the timing. George Floyd happened, right? There was a lot of volatility in relations and civil rights relations with police officers and things like that.
And fuel on the social justice movement.
A lot.
He rode that wave.
And remember, who was the president of the United States at the time? Trump. So he was to the right. Which way? What happens when a pendulum swings far right?
Trump radicalized everybody who had left-leaning ideology. Not everybody, because I have left-leaning ideology. I don't think I got radicalized against him, although a lot of people really did get insanely deranged at their anger with Trump.
Well, I think that's why Gascon got elected, because he was the opposite of Trump, and at the time he seemed like the right guy, the shining knight on the white horse.
Right.
But now
I even felt it whenever, for me, it was, and everybody has their own particular, I think, relationship to this very strange and unique president of U.S. history, Donald J. Trump. For me, the only thing that I try to be balanced about what I think of him, and I try to not dive into a lot of the aggravating verbiage that he puts out there. But when he started attacking like federal judges, and just kind of calling them out and attacking the
he's doing that now, by the way. He's attacking his Edragon. Yeah.
I mean, he would attack like,
and he got sanctioned $10,000.
A federal judge who had Mexican heritage. Yeah. He would sort of attack him from a racial slant.
Right.
And I feel like it's sort of like a very disingenuous way to try to poke holes in our justice system. It's like, that's an American federal judge. At least respect the office. And whatever you're criticizing, it shouldn't have to do with his last name, sit as a U.S. federal judge. I used to extern for a judge. I do have a soft spot in my heart for federal judges somewhere. I mean, it's kind of part of our system. You don't want to fracture that foundation of the system, right? By questioning a federal judge's credibility. Maybe it is legitimate to question at times. I don't know.
I don't think there's anything wrong to question a federal judge's acumen for the law or his opinion.
Right. But you're just attacking
don't get personal. Yeah.
It's just his last name.
I mean, what are you going to attack? Is he going to? That's like me attacking Trump for being German. You're just a German. So you can. I mean, we're all from somewhere, right?
Yeah.
So
I don't know how we got onto him, but I think it was to explain how much
the Gascon moving to the left.
Yeah.
So the phenomenon,
and LA being overly lenient on crime.
So to me, Trump was the pendulum that swung to the right. Gascon was to the left. Hopefully, I believe Eric Sedal is right in the middle.
Is he really?
And yes. I told you he dropped my murder case. I mean, I'm sorry, my civil rights case in the middle of a trial. Who does that?
That's a pretty cool person.
Hold on. He dropped my murder case too. Let me tell you about that quick story.
Tell me.
Yeah. Oh, you'll love this story, Tony. This is a great story. Picture me in a courtroom and my client walking in with shackles on his arms and his legs, walking in, shackling in, and a round table full of investigators. And they sit down with me and my client who's accused of killing somebody. And Eric's there and he's like, okay, RJ Manuelian set up this meeting. He said, you want to tell me something? What do you want to tell me? And he told him what happened during the murder, that it wasn't him. You asked me, has anybody ever talked their way out? He convinced Eric that he wasn't a part of the murder, and Eric dropped the murder case.
Right there, just
right then and there.
From a first-person interview with the guy?
Boom, right there.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So Eric cuts the fat out of the bureaucracy. That's what I'm talking about.
Got it. He's like, why should the state spend the money on this?
Absolutely.
Right.
We need somebody that is fiscally conservative, that is socially conservative and fiscally conservative. I think Eric meets that. He understands where you're wasting money from taxpayer dollars. This is an innocent person. That's who we need. Gascon doesn't understand that. Gascon has never done a trial his entire life.
Really?
Not one trial. I don't think he's done one trial. Eric Sedal has done many, many murder cases. So, we need, let me ask you, if you're going to put somebody on the battlefield, are you going to put a soldier or are you going to put somebody that's typing in the back office?
Right. No, I hear what you're saying. It's clear that we need a change. So I just encourage everybody, go do your homework.
Yes.
Look into this name, look into the other candidates, see what you think. I think coming from you, it's a very interesting endorsement in a way.
Yeah, he's right in the middle. If Gascon was to the left, Trump was to the right, Sedal is right in the middle, which brings us back to the good old times of the 90s and early 2000s where there were no smash and grabs and almost everything was almost normal. I'm talking about the crime rate. I'm talking about, now, if we had problems back then, but now is much, much worse.
We're talking about this particular set of problems that
we have the worst set of problems we've ever seen. When you tell me that I cannot go to a mall and not expect windows to be shattered and there's a possibility I may have to hunker down and protect my children from the threat of physical harm, we've gone too far.
All right, let's wrap this up and we'll come back to it. People, do your homework. Help change the city. We all, that's what we have to do.
Yeah, vote. You have to vote and
and help.
Vote Gascon out. And that's coming from a criminal defense attorney. So that's hopefully he will say a lot to you guys.
All right, we'll do this again.
Thank you, Tony.